You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey, Jeff.
Do-do-do-do.
How are you?
That's been all this week. Most of the week I've gone do-do-do-do.
Have you?
Yeah, I'm just feeling
Are
do-do-do-do.
you talking about on the podcast?
Yeah, through the whole podcast.
Wow.
Almost every time.
Well, do-do-do is an announcement.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your big announcement?
I'm just glad to be here with Chris Arbaugh today.
Oh, boo.
And serving you. And it's my privilege to be sitting across the table from you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I received that.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So today we're doing a segment called Where Are Our Listeners From? Because every once in a while, it's fun to see where our listeners are from.
There you go.
So this segment is us going ahead and listing some facts about this particular place. And then our listeners have to see whether or not they figure it out before we say the city.
Yes. And this could be anywhere in the world.
Yes. Or country.
Yes.
Okay.
Here's the first one.
Yep.
This city is named after hidden underground wells.
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
Underground wells.
Wow.
I did not know that. Okay, number 2. People in the city consume more shellfish in one day than the entire United States does in a year.
Is that true?
That is one of the craziest facts I've ever heard.
Is it true?
Wait a minute. I feel like Snoping that one.
Snope it.
Snopes.com?
Is it Snopes? Yeah. Yeah, do it.
Because I got to tell you, that if that's true, that's an unbelievable stat.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's ask Siri as soon as we're done with this.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Number 3, with its millions of lights, this city is considered the brightest spot on Earth.
Okay, well, people should get it by there.
Yeah, really close.
And then number 4, it's going to host the Super Bowl this weekend.
Oh, I know where that's at.
I know where it's at too. Here it is. It is
Las Vegas, Nevada. So thank you guys for listening.
Thanks for listening from Las Vegas.
Hey Siri, does Las Vegas consume more shellfish than all the rest of the United States?
There's no way that she has the answer to that from that.
Yeah, right here. Las Vegas's daily diet of 60,000 pounds of shrimp is greater than the entire United States.
That is amazing.
That's per day.
That's
it's
per
more
day.
than the rest of the nation combined.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So think about it. Who knew that if you're in the shrimp business, right?
Set it up in Las Vegas.
That's my boat.
Yeah.
Right? Because that would be you'd have your eyes set on Las Vegas.
On Vegas, there you go.
Son of a gun.
Okay.
Wow.
60,000 pounds a day.
Yeah. So how much?
And shellfish.
What percentage of that is like? What would the percentage be? So think about the accumulation of all of the year. So 365 days.
Let me do it on my calendar. A lot. It would be a lot.
You just start tapping your phone.
It'd be a lot.
Like you're using it as an adding machine. That's so great.
I don't know how I'm supposed to answer that question.
But that is
a lot.
It's a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Wow. Hang on. It's a lot. That's so great. Oh, goodness gracious.
Okay, well, that was really something.
Yes, it is. It was something.
Yes. So today we are reading a passage in Matthew, Mark, and is it Luke? Yes, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all telling the same story of this parable that Jesus tells of the evil farmers.
Yes.
And man, there's nothing I like more than evil farmer stories. So this is going to be super exciting.
Evil farmers. That's because you sort of were growing up on the farm
I grew
world.
up on a homestead. Yeah.
So
we had orchards and vineyards, and we raised all of our own food and
raised it.
Stuff. Yeah. We grew it.
Yeah.
And then we heated the house with wood, and we sold wood and got sides of meat and beef and pork and stuff like that. So
raised it would mean like you slaughtered animals, right? Did you guys do that?
No, we didn't slaughter. Well, chickens we did. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, then that's raised.
Yep. Yeah. One time, my dad bought 100 chickens, 100 chicks for laying eggs.
You told me this.
And then when they started growing up, we found out we had 99 roosters.
So awful.
Yeah, it was bad because we were all excited. Man, we're gonna start a chicken or an egg operation, right? Jeff's gonna be making money selling eggs, and turns out roosters don't lay eggs.
Right.
We got 99 roosters.
Well, they make a lot of noise.
They sure do. So we butchered all those.
Yes, I'm sure.
Here we go. So Matthew chapter 21, verse 33, starting off the parable of these evil farmers. It says, "Now listen to another story. A certain landowner planted a vineyard, built a wall around it, dug a pit for pressing out the grape juice, and built a lookout tower. Then he leased the vineyard to tenant farmers and moved to another country. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent his servants to collect his share of the crop. But the farmers grabbed his servants, beat one, killed one, and stoned another. So the landowner sent a larger group of his servants to collect for him, but the results were the same. Finally, the owner sent his son, thinking, 'Surely they will respect my son.' But when the tenant farmers saw his son coming, they said to one another, 'Here comes the heir to this estate. Come on, let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves.' So they grabbed him, dragged him out of the vineyard, and murdered him. When the owner of the vineyard returns, Jesus asked, 'What do you think he will do to those farmers?' The religious leaders replied, 'He will put the wicked men to a horrible death and lease the vineyard to those who will give him his share of the crop after each harvest.' Then Jesus asked them, 'Didn't you ever read this in the scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is wonderful to see. I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a nation that will produce the proper fruit. Anyone who stumbles over that stone will be broken to pieces and will crush anyone who falls on it.' When the leading priests and Pharisees heard this parable, they realized he was telling the story against them. They were the wicked farmers. They wanted to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowds who considered Jesus to be a prophet." Oh, Jesus went right at it.
So there's two stories, because yesterday's parable, back to back, he's telling it like it is.
Yeah, he is. He's calling them out at this point.
Yeah.
In Mark chapter 12, it tells the same story. It says, when Jesus began teaching them with stories, then Jesus began teaching them with stories. A man planted a vineyard. He built a wall around it, dug a pit for pressing out the grape juice, and built a lookout tower. Then he leased the vineyard to tenant farmers and moved to another country. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent one of his servants to collect his share of the crop. But the farmers grabbed the servant, beat him up, and sent him back empty-handed. The owner then sent another servant, but they insulted him and beat him over the head. The next servant he sent was killed. Others he sent were either beaten or killed until there was only one left, his son, whom he loved dearly. The owner finally sent him, thinking, 'Surely they will respect my son.' But the tenant farmers said to one another, 'Here comes the heir to this estate. Let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves.' So they grabbed him and murdered him and threw his body out of the vineyard. But do you suppose the owner of the vineyard will... What do you suppose the owner of the vineyard will do?" Jesus asked. "I tell you, he will come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard to others. Didn't you ever read this in the scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it's wonderful to see." The religious leaders wanted to arrest Jesus because they realized he was telling the story against them. They were the wicked farmers, but they were afraid of the crowd, so they left him, went away. So Jesus, in that one, it's just told a little bit differently, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Then in Luke chapter 20, verse 9, it says, "Now Jesus turned to the people again and told them this story. A man planted a vineyard, leased it to tenant farmers, and moved to another country to live for several years. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent one of his servants to collect his share of the crop, but the farmers attacked the servant, beat him up, and sent him back empty-handed. So the owner sent another servant, but they also insulted him, beat him up, and sent him away empty-handed. A third man was sent, and they wounded him and chased him away. 'What will I do?' the owner asked himself. 'I know. I'll send my cherished son. Surely they will respect him.' But when the tenant farmers saw his son, they said to each other, 'Here comes the heir to this estate. Let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves.' So they dragged him out of the vineyard and murdered him. What do you suppose the owner of the vineyard will do to them?" Jesus asked. "I'll tell you. He'll come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard to others." "How terrible that such a thing should ever happen," his listeners protested. Jesus looked at them and said, "Then what does this scripture mean? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. Everyone who stumbles over that stone will be broken to pieces. It'll crush anyone it falls on." The teachers of religious law and the leading priests wanted to arrest Jesus immediately because they realized he was telling the story against them. They were the wicked farmers, but they were afraid of the people's reaction.
Yeah, so three stories. Each of them have slightly, small different details. And like, for instance, like the third servant in the book of Mark says he was killed. And then the book of Luke says that the third servant was wounded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
So, there's a little bit of, inconsistency on the wounds there.
Yeah.
But it could be that the writers of the story just remembered it that way.
Yeah.
Or it's
you typically, if you're fatally beat, you die from your wounds.
Oh, so it could be that way. Yeah. That's true. There's room for that.
He didn't have to have died when they threw him out of the vineyard. Right. He could have died after he was thrown out of the vineyard from his wounds.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. So those aren't mutually exclusive. It still works.
Yeah. Well,
but the bigger picture is that they roughed up the servants of the
right.
of the owner,
roughed up and killed,
right?
And then they killed the son for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So and then I love how up until the point where Jesus quoted the I wonder what it was, the book of Psalms.
Yeah, Psalms 118. Mm-hmm.
Until Jesus quoted the book of Psalms, they were right there with him. And it's a matter of fact, the other ones, what the book of Luke says, how terrible a thing that should have ever happened. His listeners protested.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a terrible story.
You know what it reminds me of? When Nathan approached King David, remember? And he says, let me tell you a story about, he goes, this thing happened where the man went over and grabbed the sheep that was like a little family member. And then David stands up and says, how wicked of a thing, that person shall die.
Right.
Who has done such a thing? And he's like, that'd be you.
It'd be you.
Right?
Yep.
But he was right there with him in the story, right before the moment when Nathan pointed his finger right at Dathan and said, you are the man, right? And he was with him. That's what these guys were.
Yeah.
They were right there with Jesus.
So many of the stories that, that Jesus tells, they people come away and go, what do you mean by that?
Right.
And this one they go, hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. I think he's talking about us, right? And they want to arrest you.
Only to much more of a serious degree.
Right. So it wasn't as veiled this time. And that's what you're seeing in these last couple days. He's come to Jerusalem, he's on his way to the cross, and he's ratcheting up both his declarations of who he is. Remember a few days ago we read where he says, if you see me, you've seen God. Right. He's declaring that he's God. He's declaring that he is the sacrifice. Here, he's declaring that he is the cornerstone that the builders rejected, which the Jews recognized that as a prophetic statement about the Messiah, right?
Yes.
And so he's declaring that. And then he, at the same time now, is not being veiled with his comments about the Pharisees and that stuff. He's going, God's going to judge you. You are rejecting the Son of the King. Right?
Now, here we are 2,000 years later, and most of the nation that Jesus came to doesn't believe that he's the Messiah.
Yeah, there are more Christian tourists in Israel each day than there are actual Christians in Israel now. Yeah.
So when we went to Israel, we actually went in the middle of Palestine. There's like for those people who don't know. So Israel, the Jews have the outside, right, and then there's a wall that's kind of like a donut hole, I guess, right in the middle. Only it's bigger than that, and there's a wall in the center of Israel, sort of, that has the Palestinians that are inside of it, right?
So along the Jordan River, and then it cuts out into the country and then circles back to and around right up to the edges of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. That would be the West Bank.
Yep.
Then there's all the rest from the north to the south is Israel, and then you have the little strip of Gaza.
Which is different.
Yep. Which is separate. And those would be the two Palestinian areas that they live in.
Yeah.
And
so I was trying to describe it. I didn't do
but
that.
there's a wall or a fence that separates the two groups.
Yeah, and I didn't describe that very well. But anyway, but most Christian tourists, if they go inside the wall of the West Bank or Palestine, they usually only go there for like Bethlehem.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So inside the wall is Bethlehem, which is a major Christian site. And but there's a lot of cities in the middle of Israel that don't have that much significance. Yeah. And if it does, people usually don't travel. Right?
But even in Bethlehem, there's far more Christian tourists than there are Christians in Bethlehem.
Oh, way more. Way more.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, my point is that I remember being there in 2009, and we went to the very center of Palestine. So the very, very center of the West Bank. And it was a really small city called Zababde. And I said, why are we traveling so far into, Palestinian territory? And they said, well, we're going to a city that has the most Christians. And do you know what the percentage of the most Christians was? 1%.
Wow. Yeah.
And they said, yeah, Zababde has 1% Christian. And so that's why we're going there. And I was like, 1% is the most? And they said, yes. So we drove all the way to Zababde. And what we did was we held a vacation Bible school type event to about 100 Muslim kids. And we told them that we're going to be telling them about Jesus. Like we told them up front, hey, if you drop your kids off, we're telling about Jesus. And they all said, that's fine. And they were totally open to it. So we're like, cool. So that's what we did. And do you remember what I was in charge of?
No.
Outdoor games.
Oh, yeah.
120 degrees. Everybody else was indoors teaching lessons. And by the way, I kind of teach.
Right. A little bit of a teacher.
But somehow I got stuck with outdoor games, right? And by the way, I had all these things like soccer involved, right? Until I realized the only outdoor game that anybody wanted to play was something with water.
Oh, right.
So I was like, dip this sponge and let's pass it over our heads. And it just drips on everybody and they're all like giggling. Yeah. They just wanted water. Anything that involved water. Okay, everybody squirt each other.
Right.
Anyway, the point is that I went off on a tangent to say that
the people had rejected him.
Yes. Yeah. It's a nation that by and large fulfills the prophecy of Psalm 118. Yeah. The stones that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. And it says that he's going to kill the farmers and he's going to rent the vineyard to somewhere else that's going to be a lot more fruitful. That's going to do a lot of the work. And Christianity and the message of Jesus has been spurred on by other places other than where Jesus came to.
Yeah. And so when Jesus is referring to himself as the rock here, right? Yeah. The stone, that had to have really gotten Peter's attention probably.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, wait a minute, right? And later on, Peter is the one who says that we are a holy nation of priests, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's in this context that he says, I'm the rock.
Right.
And I tell you, in verse 43 of Matthew 21, it says, I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a nation that will produce the proper fruit. Right? Well, what is that nation? He's saying, I'm going to give it to the whole world, right? All the Gentiles, everybody who is willing to come to faith in me, they will, even though they're from every tribe and every people group in the world, every language group, they will be a nation of holy priests for me on the whole planet. And they will accomplish what you've refused to do for me. Yeah. God's plan was always for Israel to be a witness and a testimony to the world. And instead they isolated themselves and then they built their own systems that began to reject him. So when he talks about, the king sends, or the owner, the landowner sends his servants, and those are the prophets. That's what he's doing. Right. Jesus already told himself, you guys are the ones who killed the prophets. He says that several times. Here, those are the ones, those servants that come in, they beat one, they killed another, right? And then he says, and then you're going to kill the son.
Right.
Right.
Which is him.
That's him. Like literally now in 2 days.
Right.
They're going to kill him. So this is really, really close. And then because of that, the king's going to come back and wipe you out. That's what he's going to do. This owner is going to wipe you out, and then he's going to set up a new kingdom with new servants that are going to be a new nation. And that nation isn't about just the land, it's about the people. And that's what Peter says later on. That's why I was highlighting that we're a nation of holy priests, Christians, right?
Right.
And it's not that we are a nation with priests, but rather every one of us is a priest, right? We all can go to God. Book of Hebrews says we can go boldly before the throne of grace. Every one of us has access to the King, and every one of us has the mission, then he says, to bear the right kind of fruit, right? We'll produce the proper fruit. And the proper fruit is the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that wins souls is wise.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
He that wins souls is wise.
Yeah.
So I remember preaching one time, and I said that verse, in the King James is he that winneth, right?
Yeah.
I said, he that winneth souls is wise. And so then I stumbled and I said, so if you want to be wise, go win a soul.
Yeah.
Which that's not what that means. But it was good preaching.
Yeah.
So I think that overall Jesus is approaching Jerusalem. He knows his time is near. He's not saying anything that isn't true. He's getting bolder and bolder with his claims. He already knows, as we read a few weeks ago or a few days ago, that he had when he overturned the money tables. Remember that?
Yeah.
He overturned the money changers and the tables, and the people were selling doves and sacrifices for profit unjustly. He overturned those, and then he had people really, truly rally behind him. They conspired against him, and Jesus knows it's coming. And so he's like, hey, it's set in motion now, right?
Yeah.
There's no holding back. So I'm just going to come out with it. And he's coming out with bolder and bolder, truths that they don't like.
He tells this story, I believe, because of he knew that they were going to react. Because I think he's exposing their plot to kill him. Right? There's going to be some people who go, yeah, Jesus needs to die. That's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, whatever. But there's not in the podcast, but in the course of days that are happening. In the course of days, we're in the last 6 days of Jesus.
Right, because he is clearly at Passover.
That's right. So there's going to be others who go, hey, wait a minute. Jesus said that they were going to kill the Son, and he claimed to be the Son.
Right.
Right. So I think what he's doing is he's just kind of driving a wedge. He's being clear, and the fact that he knew that the priests would pitch a fit about this, and the Pharisees, the religious teachers, would go, hey, wait a minute. You're talking about us. He's exposing the fact they're going to kill me.
And he's reinforcing prophecies.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Just letting everybody know that every prophecy written about the coming of the Messiah is coming true and is true. Yeah. And so again, it's for us, 2,000 years later-ish, we're able to look back and say, and yet another prophecy fulfilled, how Jesus is, true to his word, and he is who he says he is.
That's great.
Well, I think that's a good place to end.
Yep.
And I think that we will see you next time on The Bible Guys.